Hello and welcome back to this series on ethical communication with data. In the previous videos, we discussed the use of simplicity in terms of clarity for presenting our data in the broader context of data visualization. Often we'll hear messages providing simple, clear, straight-ahead messages. And in this video, we're going to talk about could there be a case for that this may be an oversimplification of the issue? Kennedy, Hill, Aiello, and Allen, writing in 2016, argue that basically these visual conventions, so when we look at common chart types, so thinking either of the things that you might see with your Excel, where it suggests sort of straight ahead pie charts or bar charts, or in their case, they were talking about certain types of maps, so highlighting certain qualities by location on a map, may decrease the amount of work the reader has to do. So if you've seen a bar chart before, you can pretty readily identify what a common bar chart is trying to tell you. And that doing so, in addition to decreasing the amount of work that the user has to do, it does also bolster the argument that's being made because they may appear objective and scientific regardless of the underlying data being presented. That's to say that the data that's actually collected and presented may have a lot of variability in it. There may have been problems with how it was collected, but many individuals may see these common chart types and say, oh, this is a reliable piece of information because it's presented in a way that I know and trust and don't have to kind of think about and dig into too much. Kinross, writing back in 1985, really talks about the history of this kind of minimalist design impulse and that a lot of this came about in the post-war period. And that a lot of this, Kinross argues, was done to really present this idea of universalism and rationality in presenting information. And so that by employing these design motifs, we may be trying to implicitly state to our reader that the message we're making is clear and unbiased and can be understood directly. But again, it's always important when we're consumers of information to be aware that there may be controversy in that data. So going back to the previous slide, thinking of what's called a chloropleth, but this sort of mapping where items are highlighted based on some criteria, there may be significant differences or significant variability in whatever's being measured. So for example, of course, we're all used to the red and blue political maps of US states, but of course we know in reality, it's not that any given location, especially at such a large unit as a state, is some sort of monolith, and that even within those criteria, there's a lot of disagreement and a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of individuals. So it's good just to remember that this clean, clear point may be sort of overwriting or oversimplifying to the message or to the reality underneath. So Kennedy, Hill, Aiello, and Allen, again, the association of abstraction, including geometric shapes and lines, with the universal emphasizes a belief in their ability to offer the same meaning to all viewers and to present data which are universally true. So again, they're arguing that these kind of basic ways of communicating really try to present something as being, this must be true, because many people, to use a cliche, feel that the numbers don't lie or that this may be a reliable piece of information, when of course how we collect the numbers, what we decide to emphasize may skew the end result for our end reader. So to kind of go with a relatively extreme example, so Alberto Cairo, another thought leader who I mentioned earlier, quoted expressing doubts on empathy and visualization in a blog post by Zara Aviv, noting, by hiding faces, we reduce empathy, which might actually be good, as it lets us approach issues in a more dispassionate and neutral manner. And Draga and Voss, writing in 2001, note that often statistics and plain charts may elide humanitarian concerns by expressing things. So they could be, for example, things like injury and loss of life as just bland logistical values. And to use a kind of extreme example at the far end to really counter-argue to this Cairo point, which again, this was not in direct conversation with Alberto Cairo, so he wasn't arguing in favor of this. But Correll in 2018 highlights this very starkly, highlighting these visualizations that are seemingly neutral, but are in fact Nazi maps, the subject of forced repopulation and genocide. So very, charged and very, humanitarian horrors can be sort of overlaid by these sort of minimal visualizations. So think about how this might apply, hopefully not that last example, but we might think, how might this apply to our own work? So let's say our colleagues are making a comparison of the popularity of two different programs at our library. So we're basing our outcomes on patron evaluation. So thinking back to the previous videos where users were rating how they liked the different different sessions. So they either like them a lot to dislike them a lot. And they condensed it down into just like versus dislike, just to look at this. So they made these nice charts, and they give us the percentages. And so what information, I'm going to ask you to sort of look at this, maybe pause the video if you'd like, and think about what information may be missed by this explanation, by this visualization, what voices and points of views may be important to consider that maybe are not collected in this visualization. And so we talked about in the first video as well, the p-value issue, what might be an issue around that p-value if we ran a chi-square, which again is just a way of saying, if we have these different proportions, this 2x2 square, are these likely to highlight sort of a real difference, or are these just the inherent variability? But yeah, so they said their p-value was less than 0.05, so what might be some issues? So I invite you to pause, think about this. There's not really a hard and fast answer, but just things to consider as you plan your own work in data visualization. So some things to think about going forward, thinking about why significance may be problematic to communicate, what are some drawbacks of simplification of visualizations, and what might be some ways we might present ambiguity. I invite you to reflect on all of these when making visualizations and when discussing charts and visualizations with colleagues. And as always, you're free to review these videos to really dive in as much as you like. Just quickly highlight through the bibliography so that you have that as well just to view. And I want to thank you all for attending today's session, and invite you to view the other videos from the National Networks of Library of Medicine's National Center for Data Services on data ethics. Thank you.